very much, Elaine. Good morning, everyone, and welcome, ministers, and thank you very much for being here with us on this beautiful, bright, sunny October morning in Dublin. And I'd also like to welcome the few of you journalists who we could facilitate in coming into the room today, and thank you for being here with us, and also to all of you online to the launch of the Healthy Eating Guidelines and the 1 to 4-year-old Children's Food Pyramid. So thank you for being involved. My name is Ursula O'Dwyer and I'm the Health Promotion Policy Advisor here in Healthy Ireland at the Department of Health. And my background is that I'm a dietitian, and also I chaired the subgroup that developed these guidelines. So I wish to welcome firstly Minister for Health Stephen Donnelly, then Minister for Children, Disability, Equality and Integration, Roderic O'Gorman TD, and our Minister for State for the Department of Health with responsibility for Public Health and Wellbeing, where we work, and also for the National Drug Strategy, Feighan TD. I would also like to welcome Laura McGahey, who's the Executive Director of Sláinte Care, who's here with us today, and welcome the large number of stakeholders who are looking in and have joined us online for the live launch. Many of you online will have worked with us in developing these materials in the past month. And just to show you all, here is the actual pack now of about 17 or 18 resources, including the 24-page booklet, which we have developed for parents of 1 to 4-year-old children. Finally, I'd like to welcome the members of the media, and thank you again for joining us today. So, our launch today will include an address from each of our ministers, followed by a presentation by myself about the Healthy Eating Guidelines and the Children's Food Pyramid. At some point in the morning, around 11:30, unfortunately, our fire alarm is going to go off. This is a regular weekly procedure just to check and make sure that it's working properly. So at about 11:30, when the fire alarm goes off, we'll just take a moment's break, but we don't need to evacuate the building or leave the room. And then once I finish my presentation, the online event will then finish. And then after that, there will be an opportunity for media questions from our media here in the room. So first, I'd like to welcome the Minister for Health, Stephen Donnelly TD. Thank you, Minister.
Good morning, all. What a wonderful way to start a Thursday. Some fantastic news. I'm delighted to be here today to launch the first ever National Healthy Eating Guidelines for 1 to 4-year-olds. We all want to give our children the very best start, and helping them to establish a healthy relationship with food is absolutely critical and will benefit every child for their whole lives, set them off on the right path. The guidelines critically are going to help parents and carers to set their children up, set them up for a healthy life and a healthy relationship with food their entire lives. It's another step to help make healthy choice the easier choice for everybody, which obviously is essential. It's great to be able to announce this. It's just a really positive development which will have beneficial effects for children in Ireland for years to come and for decades to come. We're going to be seeing health benefits from this initiative in 40, 50, 60, 70 years' time from now. I mean, that is just a wonderful thing. Now, a lot of work has already been done for adults and older children with the Healthy Food for Life resources, but this today is the first time we have guidelines to help families in the crucial early years with their boys and girls. And it shows that we really are making good progress on the Healthy Ireland agenda. I want to thank all of those who've been involved in putting these fantastic guidelines together and resources together. Particularly, I'd like to thank Ursula O'Dwyer, the department's nutrition advisor, and Safe Food, who oversaw the beautiful food photography that is throughout the packs, as well as the Healthy Eating Guidelines booklet. The toolkit includes a healthy eating food pyramid. The pyramid I was looking at, I don't know about the rest of you in the room, it's got bigger since my childhood. I seem to remember it only having 3 or 4 steps, and I seem to remember the crisps and chocolate piece something bigger. I'm glad to see that bit is smaller now. Maybe all the kids won't be delighted to see it, but it's fantastic to see. It really is an impressive and a comprehensive set of materials. And what's lovely to see is they're designed to be very easy to use for parents and for carers and for kids to be able to engage with. And in that regard, I'd also like to thank the Scientific Committee of the Food Safety Authority of Ireland for their work in producing the scientific recommendations, which obviously are a core fundamental part of these guidelines. You know, in a time of pandemic, we appreciate more than ever the importance of protecting our health and well-being, and it's something that starts with a healthy childhood. A childhood obesity is a serious challenge. It's a growing challenge, not just in Ireland, but right across the world. And it's a real priority. It's a priority for this government. It's a priority for me as Minister for Health. And these guidelines are an important new resource for parents and carers to help them with the sometimes difficult job of providing healthy and balanced food and portions for their children that are appropriate in these early years. And as Minister for Health, I'm really glad that this progress has been made for the future of our nation's children. And we know that dietary and other habits formed in early years do impact on health throughout our lives. And I believe having these guidelines in place for our youngest children is another important part of the foundation on which we build a healthier Ireland. There's been a lot of focus, quite rightly, on public health in the last few months. And I would argue that public health for many years hasn't had the level of attention it needs, hasn't had the level of investment it needs. It is at least as important as every other facet of medicine and of health services in this country. This is a real milestone. At the same time, yesterday we announced a doubling of resources right across public health in the country to move from about 250 to about 500 healthcare professionals, public health doctors, public health nurses, scientists, support staff, and many others. So today is part of that. This is the cutting edge of why public health is just so important, why we need to invest in these sorts of initiatives, and why this government has just kicked off a very, very serious investment in public health capacity in this country. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister Donnelly. Now I'd like to welcome the Minister for Children, Disability, Equality and Integration, Roderic O'Gorman TD.
Thanks very much, Ursula. Good morning, everybody. And like Minister Donnelly, I'm absolutely delighted to join him, to join Ursula, and to join Minister Feighan in launching these guidelines today with the specific healthy eating guidelines for 1 to 4-year-olds, but also then the food pyramid as well. And I think it's important to note that I suppose it's a nice, simple image, but it's the combination of a huge amount of work and research that's been done within the Department of Health and in the team led by Ursula. So I think we have this very simple image here today, but we have to remember that there's a huge amount of work that's gone in behind that, the research, the consultation, and just express my gratitude to everyone who's been involved in this whole process. The issuing of these guidelines and the issuing of the food pyramid ties in with the wider government approach towards young people, and that's set out in First Five. First Five is the 10-year whole of government strategy for babies, young children and their families. And when First Five was initially published in 2018, it identified the promotion of positive and healthy eating habits as one of the 14 core action points that it wanted to deliver over its 10-year period. And I know when it was first drafted, it was a publication of my own department, but a lot of work was done with the Department of Health at the time. And we prioritised this idea of the food pyramid and the healthy eating guidelines for 1 to 4-year-olds. And what these guidelines do is that they bridge a gap that existed because there was already guidelines to on nutrition during pregnancy, and there was guidelines for age 5+. But we've now filled that gap that was there, and we now have a set of guidelines covering healthy eating from the prenatal period all the way up to the teenage years, and that's really important. And the guidelines, they contain 9 simple messages for parents and for anybody engaged in the preparation of meals for young people. So it's the whole idea of creating good nutritional habits, but also reminding ourselves that key things like breastfeeding are really important to nutrition. The guidelines, they contain simple meal plans, simple snack plans. So they're there as a really handy resource for parents, and they take, again, that complex area of nutrition and parents, as we know, all incredibly busy at the moment and at every time, and it just puts them into nice, simple packages of meals that are easy to prepare and, of course, are nutritious for young people. So it's of huge benefit to parents, but I think these guidelines have an impact beyond that as well, and particularly as Minister with responsibility for early learning and care, early learning and care centres have a real opportunity to positively influence children's nutritional outcomes, and particularly for children who are in early learning and care on a full-time basis. Probably about 70% of the food they consume in the day will be consumed in the early learning and care centre, and that's particularly the case now that 96% of children aged over 2 years and 8 months are attending ECHE, the early learning and care system that the government has set up. So each early learning and care centre is bound by regulations, and those regulations require that the children attending the service get a nutritional diet, and each service has to develop a policy on healthy eating. And today's guidelines are going to be a real assistance to all the services around the country in guiding them as to their policy on healthy eating, and again reminding them about portion size is really important, limiting treats, but just the general approach to good nutrition. And these guidelines are now going to be sent by my department to all early learning and care services around the country, and we're going to hope to embed these guidelines in their day-to-day practice. But this is just, again, another step of the implementation of the First 5 strategy. And we're going to be developing nutritional standards for early learning and care services again. So these guidelines will influence the standards that will be rolled out. And following on from those standards, we're looking at developing a pilot meals program for early learning and care service, which is another commitment we set out in the First 5 strategy. And this pilot, which will initially be run in community not-for-profit early learning and care services, and focused again on children who are in the ECHE program. And we're going to pilot a range of meals, including hot meals for young children. And following the conclusion of the pilot, and we'll evaluate its success, and we'll evaluate the uptake and the popularity of the various meal options, we're then going to look at potentially rolling out meals for early learning and care services on a more permanent basis. And work on this is going to commence in 2021, next year. I think this is really important because we had a really good debate in the Dáil yesterday on the issue of child poverty, and there was quite a lot of discussion on the issue of food poverty among young people. And we're setting out this effort to provide school meals. As we know, we provide school meals for a lot of children in primary and secondary schools, but we're now looking at the early years context as well, and again the government involving to support young children, support good nutrition, and make sure that we rapidly reduce food poverty as an overall element of child poverty. So just to conclude, warmly welcome the publication of these guidance today. I think and I hope that parents and grandparents and everybody involved in the care of children in the home will be influenced by them and will be able to draw assistance from them. But I think beyond the home as well, in early learning and care scenarios, these guidelines are going to be incredibly important as well. It's a really good example of government departments working together and working together for the benefit of young children. It's an implementation of First first 5 in my department. It's an implementation of the Obesity Policy and Action Plan within the Department of Health, and I look forward to continuing to work with Minister Donnelly and Minister Feighan in rolling out further initiatives. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister O'Gorman, for that address. And I'd now like to welcome Minister for State for the Department of Health with responsibility for public health, wellbeing and the National Drug Strategy. That's Mr. Feighan TD to address us all, please.
Thank you, Ursula, and good afternoon, everybody, and I hope you're keeping well. And I think in a day like today, one of our goals is to deliver more vitamin D in winter months, and today goes a long way towards delivering the vitamin D. And of course, I come from the west of Ireland, down in Sligo, and the west is best, but every time I come to Dublin, it's much sunnier up here on the east coast. So I hope we have to maybe take a little bit more vitamin D in the west of Ireland as well. As a Minister for Responsibility for the Healthy Ireland programme, I want to join with my colleagues, Minister Donnelly and Minister O'Gorman, in welcoming the launch of these very important new healthy eating guidelines for children aged 1 to 4, and in thanking everyone involved in the department that have put it together. These guidelines are of particular importance in my own home, as I am a parent of 2 young children in this age group myself, so it's not surprising that tackling the worrying needs and trends associated with childhood obesity in this country is a top priority of my wife and I. It really is great to see such an important piece of work coming to fruition, and I certainly intend to make use of these guidelines whilst at home. And the new guidelines are really clear and easy to use, and I think they will be a great asset for people like myself with young children at home. And many times you're there and you're Googling and you're asking advice from friends, but on this occasion it's great to have those guidelines in written form as well. The launch of these guidelines is an important milestone in the Obesity Policy and Action Plan, which has been in place since 2016. And a fundamental principle of this plan is that every sector of society must play its part in combating obesity, and parents and carers of young children have a crucial part to play, as it can help children form good habits which can benefit their health throughout their lives. These resources will help them play their part in winning this battle, which is so important for our future. I am firmly of the view that every parent wants to give their children the best possible start in life. So this is why getting their diet right from an early age is of huge importance for our children's future development. While acknowledging just how challenging it can be when trying to feed younger children, this new suite of resources launched today will help parents and others to understand the issues around healthy eating for children much better, and it will help families through the initial years of a child's life up until they are 4 years old. A critical message from these new guidelines is that we really need to recognise that small children have small tummies, and as a result we need to be mindful of the portion sizes that we're giving them when eating. The Children's Food Pyramid will help to assist families to make healthier choices for their child, as it provides a range of information on the number of servings from each shelf needed at different stages. It also recognises that some children of the same age will need more food and some will need less. Another important message is that we should limit treat foods that are high in fat, sugar or salt. I know this is really hard to avoid, particularly with young children when we want them to behave or feel better, but it is very important that we only do this very occasionally, as these foods are very low in nutritional value and may prevent kids from eating our healthy foods. Because of this, they are on the top shelf of the Children's Food Pyramid and should be only given in tiny amounts, not more than once or twice a week. Our children are better at making changes when the whole family do it together, and I strongly recommend that families try to make these positive changes together. Small changes made now can make a big difference in life. The development of these resources will ultimately help improve the health and well-being of children and their families, and as a result, they are an important foundation in the implementation of the Healthy Ireland framework. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Minister Feighan. And now it's time for my presentation. So the ministers have already mentioned some of the things, but I'll just give you a further snapshot. So here we have the cover and the children's food pyramid, and you can see we've got children 1, 2, 3 and 4 actually surrounding the food pyramid. You'll see later that we've grouped the children into age 1 and 2 and age 3 and 4 for ease of recommending the actual servings from the food pyramid. So I just want to tell you a tiny bit about the policy. The ministers have already mentioned about the obesity policy and action plan, and what we do in the department when we decide to draw up or develop population healthy eating guidelines. We ask the FSAI Scientific Committee to look at the evidence there and to give us scientific recommendations so that we have a good, strong evidence base for the message that we're putting out to parents and other health professionals and creche workers. So then, under the obesity policy and action plan, we have an obesity policy oversight implementation group, and they have a healthy eating subgroup. And that healthy eating subgroup, which I chair myself, that was tasked with drawing up the guidelines with the key partners on that group. So that group represents government, 4 government departments as well as ourselves, and also a number of other stakeholders. But I'll be showing a slide at the end thanking all those people. So we set up a small technical working group, and by that I mean the dietitians and nutritionists on the group set up work pulling together the actual recommendations and developing them into a user-friendly way. And then the HSE, Safe Food, and the Irish Nutrition and Dietetic Institute, together we all looked at how we could practically apply this information and make it realistic to parents. So we were working on that for really about a year, I suppose, and then in August this year, the FSAI gave us sample meal plans, and these sample meal plans for each of the different age groups allowed us to actually decide on the child-size portions on the food pyramid. They give us sample ranges for smaller, younger children, for average children, and then for children who might be taller for their age, and we picked the average range, and that's what we're recommending in the food pyramid for the child-size portions. And we also, you will see, we also have a range even within that, so that children, to make sure that children get the food that they need, and their parents are guided by their children's appetite. So then with Ipsos MRBI in September, we focus tested the main booklet, which you're going to see today, and some of the other resources. And we listened to parents. We had both parents in urban centres and also in rural areas. The key target group for this information are parents in the C2DE category and the farming community. So we tested it with all of those. We also tested it through Ipsos MRBI with with health professionals, with GPs, public health nurses, and practice nurses, and then separately again with creche workers and preschool workers and managers. Because as Minister O'Gorman said, the next stage now is that we're going to be transferring these guidelines into nutrition standards for the early learning and care centres and for preschools. So that brings us then to the launch today and the dissemination and promotion. Okay, so the really important thing is that good healthy eating habits started early can last a lifetime, and there's a lot of evidence to show that. And in fact, scientists have said for quite a while now that this is the best bang for your buck, so to speak, in educating these children, because the habits will last a lifetime and they won't get into bad habits too early on. These are the 9 key healthy eating messages that we have. So I'm just going to go quickly through them. So healthy eating habits can last a lifetime. Small tummies have small servings, as Minister Feighan has already said. Portion size matters. We are limiting treat foods, and I'll talk a bit about that when we come to the top shelf of the food pyramid. Offer water and milk as drinks. Milk is a key food, as you all know, because children are moving from mostly a milk diet, transitioning onto a broader diet. Having a regular daily routine is important, and I think particularly in these COVID times, that's particularly important for children as well. More vitamin D is needed in the winter months. Now, this is a brand new policy message from the Department of Health. We know that young children get enough vitamin D in the summertime. That's both from their diet, but also from the action of sunlight on their skin makes vitamin D. And as the Minister said today, if we're lucky, the children out playing at lunchtime will get a little bit of vitamin D. But a lot of the time, countries like Ireland, who are at a northerly latitude, we actually don't get enough sun to make enough vitamin D in the winter, and the children can't get enough from their diet. So today we're announcing, as I said, a new policy, and that is that children are given 5 micrograms of a vitamin D only supplement, and that's either as drops or as a liquid, and that's from Halloween, the 31st of October, until St. Patrick's Day, the 17th of March, as we all know. And then our final key message is make sure that your child gets enough iron. We recommend offering red meat 3 times a week to children, but also choosing breakfast cereals. Okay, that's it. Thank you. So I was just saying about making sure that young children get enough iron. So offering children red meat 3 times a week is what's recommended, but also choosing breakfast cereals with added iron. So parents need to look on the label and see that the breakfast cereals have 12 milligrams per 100 grams of iron, and give these to the children most days of the week. There's one other point for 1 to 3-year-old children who are small for their age, and they may need extra iron, so they need to talk to their health professional or dietitian for advice. Okay, next then, the most important thing really is, in addition to the small tummies message, and they both work together, is that size matters. So what we have done is we have, as the Minister mentioned, we have done food photography for the booklet, which Safe Food kindly oversaw for us, and all of the food servings that are shot and that occur in the booklet are all on child-size plates and child-size bowls. So, and we encourage child-size cutlery as well. So you can see here the difference between a child plate and an adult plate, and I suppose the typical child plate would be a side plate that most of us would have in our homes, most parents would already have, and then a small bowl and a beaker or a glass with a small amount of milk or water. This just shows us in terms of what the difference between a child's portion and an adult's portion is. And particularly as part of the focus testing, parents asked us to include some information on this, especially with regard to cooked meals and what sort of size they should be serving. So you can see there, for example, in the beef stir fry, that the serving, it's on a small plate first of all, so it's probably about 1/3 of the size of the larger plate. Okay, and then drinks, as I mentioned earlier, water is the best drink, and we recommend offering that 6 to 8 times a day. And obviously also breastfeeding is a key important plank of the department's policy. So the WHO recommends that children are breastfed up to 2 years and beyond. So where parents are breastfeeding, we would encourage them to continue to do that as part of a healthy eating diet, but they can, say, put milk on their children's cereals or give them milk as a drink as well. Okay, so that brings me now to the food pyramid. So as I said, what's happened with the food pyramid is that it's slightly different from the adult pyramid, not just in terms of the child-sized portions, but also we have swapped the bottom 2 shelves around. So now cereals, bread and potatoes are on the bottom shelf, and then fruit and vegetables are above that. And part of the reason why we have fruit and vegetables above that is because they're very high in fibre and they're very filling, and they might fill up the little tummies too quickly, and then they wouldn't be able to get the additional food that they need to get the nutrients for growth and development. So that's the thinking behind that. And then, as you can see, we have the different categories, ages 1 to 2, and then ages 3 to 4. And then we have the number of servings recommended for each of the groups. So the idea is that you transition from mostly a milk diet at 1 year of age up to a family diet when you move on to the main food pyramid at 5 years of age. Now, this is some of the lovely food photography that I mentioned. I'm not going to go through these, but just to show you that in terms of servings, you can see that we say for 1 and 2 year olds, you need 3 or 4 servings a day. And then for 3 to 4 year olds, you need 4 to 6 servings a day. We have specifically fact sheets, apart from even the information that's in the booklet, and those little thumbnail sketches at the bottom are of the fact sheets for each of the shelves of the food pyramid, which is in your pack. But I just want to highlight, say, for example, the range again. Even within the actual range for the number of servings, we also have a range for the size. So if you look at, say, the wheat biscuits, for example, that's 1 to 1.5 wheat biscuits. The bread is a half to 1 slice of bread. So depending on your child, because all children come in different shapes and sizes, and depending on their appetite, it gives you the range within which to make decisions and be guided around their portion size. And also because these will be translated into nutrition standards for the early learning and care centres, it's important that we have some sort of a guide for them as well, because they're not going to be doing one meal for a 1 year old and different meal for 4 year olds. So that's a really important message. So there's a lot of flexibility around the actual number of servings for each age, and also the size of the portion. One thing I would like to mention, again, because it came up particularly in the focus testing, and that was around white bread. So as you see, we have half a slice of white bread there as an example, and that is because the guidance for this age group is to mix both white and wholemeal whole grain cereals. And again, this is because if you have all whole grain cereals, which adults are recommended mostly to have, it would give you too much fibre, and again, that would fill up the young children's small tummies and not give them enough room to eat the more nourishing foods that they need for growth and development. Okay, then next we move on to the vegetables, salad and fruit. And here you can see again the different range of foods. And 1 to 2 year olds here need 2 or 3 servings, and 3 and 4 year olds need 4 or 5 servings. I'm just going to quickly run through the rest of them. Milk, as I said, is a key food. It's very important in the diet of children at this age group. And in fact, you'll see here that 1 and 2 year olds and 3 and 4 year olds both need 3 servings a day. And in actual fact, that is the same amount of servings as we as adults need. So milk is a key food right throughout life, but the importance of the quantity of it, even at a very young age, is very important. And then we have the various servings there. And then we move on to the meat, poultry, fish, eggs, beans, or nuts. And here we're saying 2 servings a day for 1 and 2 year olds, and 3 or 4 servings for 3 and 4 year olds. And again, we're giving examples of what a serving would look like. And I mentioned already the importance about red meat in relation to iron. And the other thing that's important, which we do mention throughout the booklet, and particularly I should have mentioned it when we were talking about the cereals. If you're having the fortified cereal, it's a really good idea to have a small amount of unsweetened orange juice as well, because that will give you the vitamin C that children need to actually absorb the iron better. So for younger children, that needs to be diluted, and for older children, it's fine to give 100 mils just once a day. That's all that's recommended. And in fact, we do encourage parents to give children whole fruit, as in like a mandarin, but obviously in segments, but whole fruit as opposed to juices is a healthy alternative. Okay, then fats and oils. Again, this is a common message similar to the top shelf of the food pyramid. So you just give them a small amount, 1 teaspoon of spread on bread, and 1 teaspoon in cooking, and that's a sufficient amount. Okay, so now we come to the red triangle, or the top shelf of the children's food pyramid. And actually this probably is going to be the hardest message to get across to parents. And we've been quite strict on this message. The way the guidelines were developed, in fact, through the meal plans were worked out by the FSAI, Public Health and Nutrition Group, is that they looked at foods that were consumed in the National Preschool Survey that were popular in the Irish diet, and then they modelled around these and built up meals and meal patterns. So they found that in order to get all the different nutrients, really there was very little room left for foods on the top shelf. So we're saying here, as the Minister said, just tiny amounts, and we're saying once a week, and particularly for starting at 1 year of age, that really does mean just a square of chocolate or a few crisps or a half a plain biscuit or 3 soft, chewy sweets. And the reason why, I suppose, we're particularly strict is that we know from the Growing Up in Ireland survey in 2018 that by the time children had reached 5 years of age, 20% of them, or 1 in 5, were overweight or obese. 15% were overweight and 5% were obese. And obviously, having a challenge to fight that for the rest of their lives at such a young age is something that we don't want our young children to have. And because these foods don't provide any nourishment, really we want them to be reduced, and we want the grannies as well, as Minister said, maybe to have a look at the information and see, and perhaps give the children stickers or take them to the playground or do something else nice as a treat. Okay, then our message in relation to vitamin D is, as I said, that children in this age group 1 to 4 need to have a 5 microgram vitamin D only supplement. So that's a supplement that only has vitamin D, and they need to have that every day from Halloween until St. Patrick's Day. Then we have examples of healthy snacks. So we have some light snacks between meals, because it's very important, because of their small tummies, that they have 3 meals a day, but that they also have 2 or 3 small healthy snacks or small meals as such, so that they spread the amount of food that they eat out during the day. So we have light snacks for between meals, and then for the older children, we have some more filling snacks for between meals. The importance of breakfast I've already mentioned, particularly in relation to checking the label for the cereals that are fortified with iron, and having the vitamin C source as well. Then we have some tips for healthy eating every day. So we've got some tips for shopping, for things to do throughout the day around routine, and for food and drink, and for getting children to cook with parents. I think this has been particularly something that has come up in lockdown and with the COVID times in the beginning, where parents were talking about cooking a lot more, and particularly baking with the children, and sharing meals together, and I think that's really good and should be encouraged to continue. So, healthy meal times for families. Again, this is, as Minister Feighan himself said, he has experience of this, and I suppose the important thing, we have a fact sheet on this with more detail. These are just the headings. So, make a plan, have a daily routine, get the kids involved, have healthy cooking methods. 1 family, 1 meal. That's a key message we're trying to get across, that you can actually move the child onto a family meal. You do need to be careful about salt and sugar, particularly in relation to their young age and not getting them used to salty and sugary foods. Then that you actually take time out, and that you sit down at a table and share a meal together, that you don't have any screens or phones on, and that you reward behaviour and with positive comments, or with stars or stickers, or just positive comments. Okay, so we're nearly there then. This is a sample meal plan for a 1-year-old child. So we have sample meal plans throughout the booklet, and we also have, fact sheets on these with a bit more detail. So we have a sample meal plan for a 1-year-old child, for a 2-year-old child, for a 3-year-old child, for a 3-year-old vegetarian child, and for a 4-year-old child. And then we have colour-coded the food servings to show which food group that they come from, which shelf on the food pyramid, to try and help guide parents in making healthy choices. So, as I said, help for every day. We have the pack, which includes all of these pieces of information or resources that we've listed here, and we have a few more that are coming. This really is a live resource, so we're hoping to add to it as we go along. Continually, we'll probably do some more vegetarian menus. We'll certainly do more information on iron, and have a fact sheet for that. We're working on the breakfast fact sheet, so there will be more information as we go along. So Then I would just like, before I finish, just to acknowledge the members of the Healthy Eating subgroup. So as you can see there, we've had people from 4 other government departments, and we've also had the HSE, the FSAI, Safe Food, the Irish Nutrition and Dietetic Institute, Janice, who's an academic working in Cork, and Katrina and Seamus who work with me in Healthy Eating. Katrina Connolly and Seamus O'Reilly were also involved in supporting these. So then just to say, finally, that you'll find tips and information and meal plans on www.gov.ie/healthyireland/eatwell, and also there you will find links to the mychild.ie website of the HSE and the Make a Start website for the START campaign that Safe Food, the department and HSE are involved in together. So thank you very much. Okay, so now we're going to say goodbye to our online audience, and thank you very much for joining us for the live launch, and thanks to many of you who are actually involved in the working groups, and we now want you to promote these materials widely. I suppose, sorry, just to conclude, I just wanted to say that really this is an important resource to help to parents, that we know that parents find it difficult and that to know exactly what to feed their children, and they've lots of information coming at them from various places. So these healthy eating guidelines and children's food pyramid resources bring all this advice together, key advice from experts, into a user-friendly way for the very first time, as the Minister said. They were designed in consultation with and listening to parents, and we have made the information that it's easy to understand, clear and helpful for them. And we want them to know that all of us as health professionals right across the HSE as well, and Safe Food and the Irish Nutrition and Dietetic Institute, that we're here to continue to help and support them to do the best for the health of their families. So thank you very much for listening.